So Tim, as always, I'd like to learn a bit more about you before we dive into the real meaty stuff of our topic. Specifically, I'd like to know, where you came from, where you come from, and how you got to where you are now. Could you tell us your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated from college in 2011 with a business entrepreneurship degree. And ever since that point, I've always wanted to work for myself, start my own business. And so I had a couple of jobs, marketing jobs, sales jobs, working for an SEO company after college. And on the side, I started dabbling with WordPress. I initially started my own blog, and it was a disaster. I realized that I didn't really like writing, and so having a blog really wasn't the best thing for me at that point. And then I kind of put WordPress aside for a couple of years until I was engaged. My then fiance, now wife, were starting the wedding planning process, and so I was tasked with creating a wedding website. And so I did what most people do, and I Googled wedding websites or wedding website builder.
I'm in the middle of that process right now.
Yeah, exactly. You can relate. And I really didn't like what was out there, and I thought, hey, I could probably do something better. I wasn't a designer yet by any means, or had barely dabbled with WordPress, but I went back to my Elegant Themes membership that I had bought previously when I started the first blog, and I started the process of customizing a theme. I can't remember what theme. It might have been Chameleon. I can't remember. And just started the process of building a wedding website using one of Elegant Themes, and I got a lot of compliments on it. A lot of people said it looked great, like it was so informative. We really liked it, and so I thought that there was some potential there, and so I started the process of creating a wedding website builder based on WordPress using themes from Elegant Themes.
Oh, nice.
And creating a productized service. And then simultaneously, I was doing some freelance jobs on the side as well, just for general small businesses. I did a website for a lawyer, a dental lab, and so forth. And then this was also while I was working full time. And so I
So
launched.
you weren't busy at all.
No, not at all. So I launched with my father as my business partner. He's been a graphic designer for the past 25 to 30 years. Can't remember. So he was really the core designer. I was more of the I don't want to say developer, just based on our earlier conversation, but the one kind of kind of pulling together all the solution. And so we launched premiumwebsite.com, which was a do-it-yourself wedding website builder based on WordPress. Wow. So, and then fast forward a couple years.
And you built that as a productized service.
Yeah, exactly. So it was meant to be an automated do-it-yourself solution. The idea of creating something and then being able to continuously make money off of it for months, weeks, and months.
So the original idea was for it not to really be a service so much as an actual product. So people would sign up, create their own, and then be done. You guys would have just built the system that allowed people to do that.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess the best example would be Squarespace, but specifically for wedding websites, and then built on WordPress, of course.
Gotcha. And sorry, you were going to say something else as I was asking those questions?
Yeah. So we had launched. I was still working full time in a sales job, and then things didn't really work out, and we'll get to that later with Premium Website. It didn't turn into $1 million business like we had hoped, and so I was kind of at a crossroads. I hated doing sales full time, and so I was like, I'm gonna take the leap and start doing WordPress freelancing full time. And so that was about 4 months ago. So it's still kind of fresh in the full time swing of things. And then now working on part 2 of the productized service.
Right. So basically, just to, I guess, set up the next segment, which is our main segment, our main conversation, building and launching productized services. you have done and you still are doing freelance stuff for your, I guess, your full-time income at this moment.
Yep.
And you had one big go, and it was a big go. I mean, your website, is it website.com or premium website?
Premiumwebsite.com. Yeah.
So premium wed, and that's not website, it's wed with a D. So
Yeah,
premium website,
pun.
yeah, .com. Check it out. It's a cool site, cool service. It's still up and running, but you learned a lot of good lessons from that experience, and you're looking to pick a new niche to try to create a productized service for. And you did something really nice, which was you provided me with, I think, 8 lessons that you learned. And I'd love to just go through them one by one, talk about them, ask some questions. Is that cool with you?
Absolutely. That sounds great.
All right, cool. So these are 8 lessons that Tim learned from launching one productized service on WordPress. And he's going to take what he's learned from these and put them into his second project. Real quick, is there anything you can share about your second project, or are you still keeping that under wraps for now?
I wish I could say more. My business partner, my father, is really particular about sharing certain details.
No problem.
I can say, rather than going after the consumer market, which premium website was couples, engaged couples, this is more of a business to business market. So
Cool.
we're able to have a little bit higher price points and so forth. But yeah, to be continued, though. I definitely like
Sure,
to share
yeah,
more.
and I'd love to, whenever you do launch, maybe we could have a follow-up. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's the first of 8 lessons. Number 1, don't overdevelop or try to perfect the product. Create an MVP, that's a minimum viable product, and ship, our favorite word, ASAP. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page, can you tell us what exactly a minimum viable product is? What makes it different from just an unfinished product?
Yeah, definitely. So the term MVP, minimal viable product, is used when a startup business has some sort of technology, some sort of product, and the point of it is to get the minimum product that is viable to sell and get it up and running as soon as possible. So that you can actually learn from your customers and get feedback and so forth.
Without every conceivable bell and whistle attached to it or future feature that you'd like to have.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was a mistake that we made with Premium Website. Is I was trying to create the ultimate do-it-yourself builder with all the bells and whistles in the back end, looking at all the competitors. I wanted to have everything that they had plus twice as much. Yeah. And so I wanted to outdo them in features in every way, which it just took way too long. It took us 2+ years to launch the service. And by that time, the market was extremely crowded. When I initially started it, which was back towards the end of 2012, the only competitors out there were really outdated solutions. The designs weren't responsive. They looked like they were from 2005. And so that was where the huge opportunity was.
If you would have got out sooner, you could have got money from early customers and immediately reinvested that into speeding up your development process.
Yeah, exactly. And so what ended up happening, though, was when we finally launched a little over 2 years later, the market was very overcrowded. So not only had those outdated solutions been updated, but
new players had come in.
Yeah, exactly. New competitors came in that essentially had the same story as me, that were in the process of planning a wedding, saw that there wasn't anything good out there, and so decided to create something themselves.
Yeah.
And so,
you're like, not only do they have the same product, they have the same story.
Yeah, exactly. And so it just was not good, because we wanted to perfect the product, when if we would have just got an MVP, just the minimal product that was viable to do well and sell and learn from, then we would have launched.
So what is it that someone can do if that's the case, if they're getting an MVP out, what is something that people can do to make their minimum viable product more attractive than other minimum viable products? Or is the whole idea of an MVP just to be the first? Can you help clear that up?
Yeah. So I don't think an MVP has to be a first, but I think if you're going to launch a product, typically you have something that isn't already out there. So maybe there's a solution out there that you think you could do better. So your MVP more than likely should include whatever it is that would make it better than the competition. Otherwise, what's the point of something if you're just going to be a copycat? So yeah, I'd say that's probably the best thing is, what's your competitive advantage? Make sure it has that. But besides that, don't try to perfect the product and include every single feature and bell and whistle possible.
Awesome. So let's jump to lesson number 2. Make no assumptions about your market. Do market research and learn the wants and needs of your customer. So that feels like there's a story behind it. What's going on with that one?
Yeah, so we assumed that a DIY or do-it-yourself wedding website builder was what the market wanted and needed. We looked at the competition, and that's what they had. They had do-it-yourself solutions. And so we figured if we could provide that, but better, then people will obviously choose us. They want to do-it-yourself solution. So if we provide a more powerful one that has more features, then we'd be the obvious choice. But that wasn't necessarily the case, because when we finally launched and started getting some customers or people that were signing up for a free trial, we quickly realized that they weren't so stoked on customizing it themselves. So we had a very large number of signups that were signed up for the free trial. But after they signed up and saw the back end and realized that this was going to be a little bit of a learning curve, they're going to have to invest a little bit of time and get their content together, get their photos. Then it was they realized it wasn't something that they wanted to do. And so we realized that if we were to provide more of a service where we created a wedding website for them, then it would be a lot more competitive, because it wasn't something that they had to do. As you know, right now, being engaged and planning a wedding, there's a lot going on.
There's a lot, yeah.
A lot of tasks to complete. And so by giving them something else to do, it's not what they wanted to pay for. And so that was something that we would have learned if we would have done a little more market research, talked to more couples, figured out what they actually wanted in a wedding website, and what would be helpful to them and save time for them.
So that leads me to a question. I think it's actually 2 questions, but they're very closely related. One is, what would have increased market research looked like for you? And in general, how does someone go about conducting market research? I mean, it sounds like, a report that someone with a big budget buys from a huge data agency.
Right.
I got my market research in. But for someone who, like us, is just a freelancer or a solopreneur, what does that actually look like? What does market research look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think you're right. Market research has this like big meaning to it. And it's a little scary to think of doing market research. But I think it can be as simple as talking to your potential customers. So for me, that could have been reaching out to friends that were getting married and learning from them. Because I was doing this on the side, I felt like it had to be a secret. And I didn't want my employer to know that I was starting a business on the side. And so I wasn't really getting feedback from other people that were getting married and planning weddings. It could have been also reaching out to wedding planners or wedding photographers, people that are
work in and around the industry or in and around your ideal customers.
Yeah, exactly. And know the other products out there and the services out there, know what our mutual customers want and need. And then it could have been also giving the product away for the first 6 months or so, just to get a large amount of people using it and able to get feedback from them and see what the pain points were when trying to use the product.
Like a limited free beta of some kind.
Yeah, exactly. We did a beta, but we didn't really promote it. And it was essentially a handful of people that we knew that we let try it. So we could have done a lot more, getting more people using it, talking to more people, and getting as much feedback as possible.
So I know you're not giving a lot away for your second go around at this, but what are some of the things that you're doing? How are you doing better market research this time around, I guess is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, great question. So I'm kind of entering that stage right now. So I haven't done a whole lot yet, but it's essentially reaching out to our ideal target customers and asking them if they want to use, have a free site essentially, and get the product completely free, no strings attached, lifetime customer for free. All they have to do is provide us with some feedback on it and what they want. So that's kind of the beginning stages of it. We're hoping to do some other things with partners in the industry and getting some shared clients that way as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just kind of reaching out to people. I have some connections in the niche as well, so that's going to help with the market research too.
Awesome. So let's jump to lesson 3. Lesson 3 is don't reinvent the wheel. So how did you guys avoid reinventing the wheel for website?
Yeah. So
or did you? I don't know.
yeah, for the most part, I think this is something that we did pretty well. Because I'm not a full blown programmer, I don't have the skill set to create a content management system from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the competitors in this space that have wedding website builders, they had a proprietary website builder that they created themselves, and it was solely used for this product. And so we didn't want to reinvent the wheel. WordPress is outstanding. It's the most popular content management system for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And so we took the tools that we had with WordPress and the plugin community, and then leveraging developers that are well versed in WordPress, and created a couple of custom plugins as well. And so when I say we didn't reinvent the wheel, we didn't try to create a CMS from scratch, a builder from scratch. We used what was already there, which was WordPress. And I think that's a huge opportunity for a lot of small business owners. The barriers to entry is so small compared to what it was before WordPress, and before WordPress is what it is today. Because you have all these tools in your back pocket. You have tools like Divi and awesome plugins like Gravity Forms. And I mean, the list can go on. And so you don't have to create something from scratch. You don't have to outsource development and create something completely proprietary. You can use existing tools and plugins and technology and use them in a new way, in a way that's never been done before. And that's kind of what we did with Premium Website. Is we created a self-serve wedding website builder using WordPress and plugins and so forth.
Oh, fantastic. So it sounds like for you, the big solution was, using WordPress and plugins to avoid building your own CMS or customized tools. Do you think there are common ways in which people already using WordPress still reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, probably. I think especially for newer people that aren't completely aware of all the solutions out there, all the different plugins and so forth, they'll be trying to figure out a way to achieve a certain type of functionality or feature for a site for a client, and without realizing that there's a plugin that does exactly what they want and need. So I think doing thorough research is important whenever you're starting a new client site. But yeah, I think that's definitely something that people could struggle with without even realizing it. They're trying to invent something that already exists, essentially.
Gotcha. All right, let's jump to lesson number 4. Keep WordPress as light as possible. So as I was reading this, I thought right away that I could see a potential problem or a conflict between this lesson and the previous lesson. Mm-hmm. So if you're not reinventing the wheel by using existing tools, there's a pretty good chance that you're going to acquire a decent amount of bloat. Over parts of plugins that you've patched together because you like certain features, but then there's all these other features that you're not really using, but they come with the different plugins that you've installed. So how do you keep WordPress light while also using a collection of plugins that are not probably created for your specific use case?
Yeah, that's a great question. And as I was putting these lessons together, I realized that they could conflict and contradict each other. And I guess what I mean is use plugins that achieve what you want, but avoid unnecessary bloat. And so that kind of goes along with the first lesson of don't try to perfect the product and include all the bells and whistles.
So maybe try plugins that do one thing instead of plugins that come with like 10 or 15 features that, you're like, you want 2 of them, but it comes with like 10 more or something.
Yeah, exactly. So be more of a minimalist.
Sure.
If there's a feature that's absolutely crucial, then use a plugin. If it's something that like, oh, that'd be really sweet, we can get it to do that, then maybe not, avoid the unnecessary bloat. And so I'm trying to think of an example here. let's see, I wrote one of my notes. So we had a custom plugin that we used to integrate video tutorials throughout the whole back end. So for example, we had another custom plugin that added custom post types for example, the wedding party. So when the bride or the groom is putting together the website, they could easily click add new bride, and using custom post types in WordPress, it had it all easily and intuitively.
Hopefully not add new bride. Hopefully add new bridesmaid, right?
Sorry, there we go. Thank you for correcting me. Add new bridesmaid.
I got tired of the old one, but I still want to keep the website. I'm going to just add new bride.
Yeah, swap it out. Plan a new wedding date. Yeah. So add new bridesmaid. And then we had another plugin that added video tutorials. So on every page, you could just click a button and it would pop open in a light box a video tutorial on exactly how to do that function on the page that you're on. And that plugin that we had that added that functionality, it worked great at first. There was no conflicts. We outsourced it, and I had a guy that I hired through Upwork, which is a freelance platform. You can hire professionals from all over the world. And so the plugin worked out great. And then a little bit later down the road, as we're adding in the final features before launching, I can't remember what it was, but it conflicted with that plugin. And so the videos no longer popped open in a nice light box. And so it broke that functionality. And so we had to take some steps backwards and deactivate different plugins, reactivate them one at a time to figure out what the culprit was and figure out what was conflicting. And so essentially the whole point is try to keep it as light as possible. Only use plugins that you absolutely need. And if it's not necessary, if it's an unnecessary bell or whistle or feature that doesn't isn't part of the minimal viable product, then don't include it, because it's just going to overbloat the system, overbloat the database, and cause you all kinds of conflict problems in the future.
And then when you do get maybe some more development money or resources, you can start having some custom work done for you.
Exactly. And then
that takes a lot of the plugins out of the equation in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So lesson number 5 is the next one. Let's go to that one. So lesson number 5, outsource services to diversify risk. Can you unpack that one for us?
Yeah. And that title might be a little confusing, but essentially the point I'm trying to make is use a combination of resources so that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. So for example, because this was a WordPress multi-site network, there was not just one site that we're managing. There was essentially what we were hoping would be thousands and thousands of customer websites that were all part of the same database and server, which is the way multi-site works. And so we wanted to minimize the strain on the server as much as possible. And so we used sources like MaxCDN and Cloudflare to take some of the strain off of the server so that the images were being loaded from the CDN instead of on our main server. We didn't have any emails being sent through PHP mail, which with WordPress, the default way is WordPress sends any password reset emails, any login emails with PHP mail, which is being sent through your server. And so with thousands of sites, that can be a lot of unnecessary strain on your server. And so we use Mandrill, which is a transactional email service. It's made by MailChimp, so it's very reputable. So they have a plugin. So when you install the plugin and you put in your API code, any email that would normally be sent by WordPress and PHP mail is sent through their email servers instead. So that again took some of the unnecessary strain off of the servers. And then on top of that, we use Google Apps for Business for our business email, so that if there ever was a problem and the system went down, we would still have email intact. And so just trying to use existing services out there. So I guess this kind of also goes along with don't reinvent the wheel. We were able to minimize risk and use a combination of resources to make the system run as smoothly as possible.
So basically not running everything yourself through one central location that say one thing would go wrong, everything would go down.
Yeah, exactly.
And then also, I guess, working with other people who have better expertise on very specific tasks.
Exactly.
And technology to back it up too.
Yeah. And all of those companies I highly recommend. And yeah, they were a huge help in creating a system that ran smoothly.
Fantastic. So number 6, don't use a WordPress integrated support system. Okay, so this was interesting to me because it would seem like keeping a tightly integrated system, WordPress and support would be a bonus. But obviously you had some issues. So can you tell us a bit about why WordPress support didn't work out for you guys, or WordPress integrated support?
Yeah. So we initially thought that too. We thought in order to create the best customer experience, have everything in one place, right in the WordPress dashboard, and using a WordPress support system. There's a couple of them out there, and they're not necessarily bad plugins, but it created a couple of problems that ended up making the user experience even worse.
So what were those?
So first of all, it contributed to over bloating, which goes back to one of the earlier lessons, trying to keep it simple and as lightweight as possible. Because every time someone does a support request, that's a row in the database table.
The database, yeah.
And so that was the first thing. But then second, if someone ever got locked out of their site, how do they open up a support ticket? Because it's supposed to be integrated in their website.
That's a good point.
A lot of times we had customers use our sales support chat, which was supposed to be used for like pre-sales questions, because they got locked out of their website. And so by using a third-party system, whether that's Help Scout, I think is one of the big ones, Zoho. There's actually an article on Elegant Themes recently that went through a couple of the popular support systems.
Yeah, there was.
Using one of those services that specializes in a really great support system, keeping it off of your server. So again, not putting extra unnecessary strain on your server, not bloating the database. And it ends up being a much better user experience in the long run. And you could do some tricky things to make it seem like it's still integrated into your WordPress backend. Simple thing as having an iframe. So it's all in the WordPress admin as an iframe. So it looks like it's all part of the same system and it's all integrated, but it's actually not. And then having a link on your main website that they could also submit a support ticket.
Right. And I've seen some large WordPress companies do that. I'm pretty sure WPMU Dev has the iframe support in the back end of WordPress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you could access their forums through, like you said, the iframe in the back of your WordPress admin, or you can access the same forums
on their website.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I think that's a much better approach.
Cool. So lesson number 7, don't try to tackle support alone. Create a process and share the load. So what was your support experience like, or providing support like for website? Yeah.
So because I was the one that put together the system and I created the templates and I knew our multi-site network better than anybody, naturally I was the one that was responding to all the support tickets. And I didn't seek help from my business partner, or I didn't try to hire anybody to help out. And so there was a lot of late nights trying to fix things, or I'd get an email from a customer and I have to race home from having dinner with a friend or something like that. And so this goes back to actually a recent podcast episode, creating systems and having systems in place so that you're not carrying that load on your own. So if I were to have someone that I hire to help with that and sharing the load, using Gravity forms to send it to 2 people at once or something like that, and creating some sort of system to share the load rather than me trying to take it on all by myself, which became extremely stressful.
Well, that was my next question: is what do you plan to do to spread that out in the future to help improve your support process?
Yeah, absolutely. So with the next project that unfortunately I wish I could share more, but I can't. It's going to be a little bit different format because it's not going to be completely do it yourself. It's going to be more of a service that we're building it for them. So right off the bat, I'm going to need to hire some people. Most likely I'll hire WordPress people that have their own business, and so it'd just be something that they could earn a little bit extra money with. And right off the bat, I'm going to need them to help build the site. So that'll kind of create built-in support as well. So rather than waiting till we got super busy and then trying to hire people and trying to time it right away, I'm going to need help. So that'll kind of help fix that issue right off the bat.
Cool. So jump to number 8. Lesson number 8. This is the final one. Create a sales and marketing plan and stick to it. So how did you guys handle this the first time around?
So once we launched, we were kind of like, okay, well, what do we do now?
So you didn't have one.
Yeah, essentially. People always say with the internet, there's no such thing as if you build it, they will come. There's too many websites out there. Search engines aren't going to index you right away. So
everybody who starts a blog thinking they're going to be like instant Huffington Post status figures that out really quick.
Exactly. And so we had focused on building the product and perfecting the product. And we didn't really do too much planning on how we were going to market and sell the product. And it was kind of one of those things that we kept putting off. Oh, we'll get to it when it comes. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And so what ended up happening is we decided to spend some money on some sponsored posts on some of the big wedding blogs and doing some banner advertising. And so it was kind of like we would come across a way to market, a way to advertise, and we would decide kind of on the fly whether or not we wanted to spend the money. And so we didn't plan out ahead of time, okay, we want to dedicate $5,000 to advertising. Let's find the best resources that will take that $5,000 and stretch it, the farthest. And so that's what we're going to do the second time around is have a detailed sales and marketing plan on how we're going to get from 0 customers to 100 customers to 1,000 customers and so on.
So it's interesting. I mean, your background is, you went to school for business, and I guess I'm just wondering after hearing all these 8 lessons, I mean, these are great lessons. So I'm wondering what for you coming out of school and having sort of like a formal education of business versus getting your hands dirty and trying to start a business. What was the big difference there for you? What between reading it in a textbook or listening to it in lectures and actually doing it?
Yeah. So I'm a huge supporter of experience being the best education. I think having a business degree and learning it in the classroom was a good foundation. And I think it made some of these lessons easier to learn. I was able to learn them a little bit quicker maybe.
Sure.
But nothing can take the place of getting your hands
doing
dirty.
It.
Yeah, and diving in and getting experience. And I think especially for me, everyone has a little bit different learning style, but I learn from doing. Sometimes I have to learn things the hard way and learn them for myself before I can really understand, rather than looking at a textbook, which has a lot of hypothetical examples and so forth, and kind of really learning it for myself. And
I guess that's why I asked the question, because it's just as you were saying, you're talking about sales and marketing plan. And I was like, it struck me. I was like, oh, you're a business major. Like sales and marketing, you would have thought comes right away. But then you think about, oh yeah, well, you get so involved in building the product. You get so involved and invested in figuring out the little details and solving these problems that all of a sudden you're like, I finally did it. I finally solved all those problems. Like, let's get it out there. Let's do it. Yeah. And then you're like, wait a second. There's a whole second stage to this process, and that's the selling and the marketing of it, not just the manufacturing or creating of it. So it sounds like, I guess, the takeaway of lesson number 8 might be, when you're thinking of developing a product, think of it in maybe 2 big stages with lots of small stages in between. One would be, getting the MVP ready, and the other would be preparing to launch a sustainable sales and marketing plan.
Yeah,
is that fair enough to summarize it like that?
Oh, absolutely. No, you hit the nail on the head. And I actually had a class, because my focus was on entrepreneurship. We had a class where the big project was creating a business plan. And so I knew that, I knew that I should have had that all planned out and so forth. But sometimes you just have to learn the lessons the hard way. I don't know if it was just kind of denial where I was thinking, well, this is a different type of business than we studied in business school. It doesn't really apply here.
And please, I'm not trying to call you out on anything.
No, I know.
I just meant like, cause it's funny. Cause, I've tried to do a couple of different ventures of my own. And, for a while, my job literally was writing business plans for people. I had a job at a startup where we specialized in different documents and social networking for entrepreneurs trying to get venture or angel funding. And part of what we did, one of our services was we wrote business plans. And that was my specific job was to write. So it's like, just like you said, it's like I had all the book knowledge I needed. I should have and even practical knowledge in that sense. But like when you're doing it yourself, sometimes you get so absorbed that almost before you even start the super absorbing process of creating your product, you need to have some semblance of an idea, or at least know that there's going to be a stage before you take that thing live, that it has to have that, further development on the sales marketing side.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise you end up wasting time and money, time by spinning your wheels trying to figure out what's next, and then money by spending money
sort of a la carte whenever something comes up, instead of, here's, like you said, here's $5,000. Now, how do we get the most out of it? Instead of, hey, here's this cool thing. Oh, it costs $5,000. Okay, yeah, we'll just throw all of our budget at that because that's the only idea we got right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So learn that lesson the hard way.
All right. So looks like we're getting to the end of our interview. And at the end of each interview, I like to take a moment and conclude things on a parting thought, usually prompted by a final question. So today we've been talking about building and launching productized services. We've covered a lot of ground, 8 big lessons plus a few in between. And I think for someone who's maybe new to the idea of a productized service and is interested in going down that road, that might be a lot to keep in their head all at once. So if there's one thing, and I know all 8 are definitely important, but if there's like one thing that you would want people to kind of keep at the forefront of their planning as they start and move into it, what would that thing be?
I would say, and this is kind of combining 2 of the lessons, which I'd say are probably the most important, but do the market research, learn your target audience, learn what they're actually looking for and what would actually sell, and then create an MVP and just get out there, because you're going to refine your product by people using it and getting feedback. Whether you're a one-man team or you have a couple different people that are all contributing, those are only a couple of heads that are looking at it. And sometimes you get a little bit too close to it and you're not able to look at it from an objective standpoint. And so having other eyeballs, other people that are your potential customers using it and looking at it and giving you feedback is the best way to go.
Very well said. Tim, thank you so much for coming on Divination. I really appreciate it.
You are welcome. Thank you very much, Nathan. Appreciate it.
Don't forget, if you're watching this video on YouTube or Facebook, take a moment to subscribe, follow, like, and/or share.